Welcome to another exciting episode of Level Up with Sean Meyers, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories and insights of some of the most inspiring individuals in their fields. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, and today we have a very special treat for you. Our guest today is none other than Ewan Heinemeier, a remarkable human being, best friend, husband, and devoted father of two beautiful children. But there's a twist. Instead of the traditional interview format, Ewan will be the one asking the questions today. It's not every day that I get to be on the other side of the microphone, so I'm looking forward to this unique experience. Ewan's insightful questions and his vast knowledge of my journey are sure to make this a memorable episode. So stay tuned for a dynamic conversation that will surely take us to new heights.
It's an honor for you to ask me to do this.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
it's an honor to have you on too, brother.
Yeah. So I'm no pro. You know, I've never been on a podcast before, but this will be my first attempt.
For the record, though, like I said in the intro, all of our friends, all of our family say you ask some of the best questions. So what better man for the job on the Level Up with Sean Meyers podcast to ask the one and only myself, not to toot my own horn, but you ask such great questions. And I know it's going to make a big impact on our audience today.
Well, thanks for saying that, man. You know, my first question is like, what's your favorite color? It took me a long time to come up with that one. No, I'm just kidding.
Green. It's green.
The audience is like, this guy? Yeah. First question, man. You know, I've been listening to your podcast for, since it started. And, man, there's so many things that have come up. And funnily enough, first question, we were running together at the Alpha Run Club a couple weeks ago. And I analyze everybody. I always try and think like, man, why are they that way? What made them this way? And we spent 11, 12 years together. And so I know so much about you. But we were running the other day and you mentioned when you were younger, you had your thyroid issue and it kept you smaller because you hadn't developed physically. And it just clicked in my mind. I was like, man, is that got something to do with the way Sean is? Because I know, kids have trouble if they have issues when they're younger, learning disabilities or physical disabilities, they're not equal. So they have to do more to compete. They either shrink or they step up. And so I just was curious, what was that like, the experience? We've never really talked about it before. I mean, little bits, but I'd love to, how could you answer that question and translate into how it's built you into who you are today?
Yeah, man. So I had my mom and my sister, we all had thyroid disease, which is like an autoimmune disease. And I think this is the proper terminology for it, diagnosed with it at the age of 12. So before then, I was kind of a late bloomer. And so what I mean by that is like, I didn't hit puberty until like 13 or 14 when all my friends around me at, 9, 10, 11 were having hair under their armpits.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like we were at my dad's shop when I was like 9 or 10 and acquaintance at the time that I was hanging around had lifted his arms and I saw hair underneath his arms. I was like, well, I looked at mine. I was like, I don't have any hair underneath my arm. Like, is there something wrong with me,
Yeah.
And fast forward, because my mom and it just kind of runs in the family on the autoimmune disease and the thyroid, I ended up getting diagnosed with thyroid disease. And so it's been managed ever since I was like 11 or 12 years of age. So it seemed like I was behind it. Yeah, man. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like I was behind all of my friends, just genetics wise and physically, like what I could do with my body. So I feel like I had to put extra work behind the scenes to get to where I wanted to do and who I wanted to become. Now, I never let it allow me to identify who I was. I just used it as leverage, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, cause that's a big moment to me, like having something to deal with something like that. You're comparing yourself to other kids, and at that age, you're not emotionally mature enough to understand it. That's gotta. Was it like? Did it put that pit in your stomach? Like, man, I'm not like these other kids. Like, what was those moments like? What were some of the examples? Like, you see, kid running faster than you or whatever. What's your thought process? Are you like, I gotta work harder. I gotta figure out how to get stronger, or what was that like?
Yeah. So what you don't know is what you don't know. And so reflecting back when I was that age, my parents always loved me for who I was. And so I guess that transition to me kind of looking at myself in the mirror is like, I'm not better or worse, or I'm not, because there was so much, like my mom, there was so much love in the house. Like it just never affected me. If
Mhm.
anything, it just, because of their love, it just helped me inspired me and empowered me to do the things, even though that I may not have been like physically wise. I was behind 2 or 3 years from a lot of the guys that I was competing against in baseball at 13, 14 years of age, right?
Mhm.
And even when I started getting into like, baseball, football, motocross, and all these different sports, I never allowed it to like, oh, I got an autoimmune disease, or a thyroid problem, and I'm 2 or 3 years behind the guys that I'm competing against. And it's interesting that you asked that, because now reflecting back on it, like it makes perfect sense. Like I'm 2 or 3 years behind these guys, and their bones, their muscles, everything is like, it'd be like, a 9-year-old, right, competing against a 13-year-old. I don't even know if that's fair or not, but that's kind of how it was, because I was 3 years behind. But not one time, Ewan, not one time did I ever look at it go, dang, I got an autoimmune disease and I allowed that to get the best of me, right?
What did you do? So in my mind, I'm like, you had to have kept up. You must have had to have worked harder in my mind.
Yeah.
And that is the secret sauce in my mind. A kid who has a speech impediment, man, they got to work much harder on speaking well. A kid who's got dyslexia has got to knuckle down on how to read better or whatever to overcome that. So by the time they, if they adapt, they have to figure out different ways, because they're not, if you were to compare it to like a neurotypical brain, they have to work harder. So they have to do it differently, because it's not the same path. And so it's just that doing things differently that allows them to have a thought process when they're older in the real world, quotation marks. And that's what's valuable, is because they have a different perspective on life, and it helps them to come up with different types of solutions than the average person. Would you say it's similar to yourself? Like you had to do it differently than most kids?
I always felt like the underdog. And what I mean by that is like, I always felt like I came in last place, I was the last guy to be picked on the team. It always stressed me out. Like, am I going to be selected? Am I going to be picked on the team? And whether that was baseball, football, even football, I was really never taught football. And then when I first tried out in like 6th grade, 7th grade, I didn't know how to wrap somebody up properly. So I was immediately put on the D team. And then when I started doing motocross, and even in motocross, I would get knocked down or fall down because I didn't have the balance. And so I would become in last place. So everything that, motocross, baseball, football, any sport, I guess this is where all started, and like built my foundation on. Like my mentality is like, well, if I'm going to be in last place, like I'm not going to sit here and like, and then this is kind of like where it was a fine balance between my mom and dad. My mom was like, it's okay, honey, just show up tomorrow, just keep showing up. We'll support you. We got your back. So like she had that love for me. Yeah. And then like my dad was like, you know what, suck it up, get back up, keep going, right? And compete. And so like with those two balances, I was like, all right, well, I didn't know any better. I was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years of age. And even though I was behind, had that underdog mentality, I just kept showing up because of the love and support from my parents. And so I guess over time and after several years and just molding like my identity, I became this competitive person. I became this like underdog guy. Like he's in last place. He's always the last guy to be picked on the team. And I never accepted that. I was like, how do I not become in last place? Okay, well, I got to put work behind the scenes. I got to work harder than anybody else, right? And what does that look like? And like for me, that was showing up when the other guy wasn't showing up, right? And putting in the work, learning from at that point, just learning from my mistakes. Like, what am I doing? What am I not doing? And then when I get back up on the motocross, when I get knocked back down, and when I get in last place for the football team or the baseball team, I didn't get picked for the team. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do differently? Well, here's what I need to do differently is because I need to dial in. I need to focus on what it is that these guys in front of me are doing and put one foot in front of the other. It's like, okay, nothing else matters. The guy to the right, the guy to the left, it doesn't really freaking matter. I'm going to give it my best right now. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to give it all I got to keep me coming back and get me to that like first place. I wasn't even trying for first place. I was just trying to be, if I'm in 21st place, I'm just trying to get to that 20th place, that 19th place. And then once you dial in, once you focus in, I picked my head up so many times, Ewan, whether it was in baseball, football, or even motocross and like these different sports. And I'm like, dude, I'm in 3rd place right now. I'm in 2nd place because nothing else matters. Like I've just dialed in and focused because I'm sick and tired of being last and the underdog. But you know what? That gave me the power. That gave me the leverage and empowerment alongside of my parents always showing up and supporting me. So I would say those two things, man, consistently showing up, having the support from my mom and dad, the love, and my dad being, a little rough around the edges with, and then having that underdog mentality of like, hey, you know what? Don't try to become first place. Like, don't try to be the first place. There's an old saying, right? It's better to be consistently good than occasionally great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you attest? Because that's the Sean I know today, right? Like, and that belief is still there today. So that was a belief formulated at a young age, and you don't know any difference. Like you said, when you're 12, 13, you don't even really kind of know. You're just kind of doing it. But that's where even a lot of adults today, their beliefs, you can tell, they're throwing tantrums like a child, because they made these decisions when they're 4, 5, 6, and they've never developed themselves, and they don't know why they get frustrated over the dishes not being done or someone cutting them off. It's a child's response, and that's good and bad, right? So that's all clearly you had this belief set at a young age to just, life is, I'm in last place, I got to figure out how to be first, as opposed to someone who has the silver spoon. They were just great immediately, never had to put in the effort. They're just good. And, it's age old, you see it in the movies, the guy's got to work hard to come after this person. But it's true. It's a real thing. That's why it's in the movies, because it's a real situation. Do you realize, and I'm sure you do you realize that belief that you had growing up, it was attested to maybe your thyroid issue, having to work harder, and all the success you've had today? Do you tie that together ever in your mind?
No.
To me, it's everything. I'm like, that is the mindset. Like that, when we play racquetball together, I see that Sean showing up. You're like, you just immediately are 90 miles an hour, like off the bat, like just ready to roar and how to figure it out, So to me, I just see that coming through in such a big way.
So I don't tie the thyroid and the autoimmune disease to the outcomes and to like the
belief,
journey.
the mindset, the belief of, I gotta work hard to win, because you work so hard to win, and you do
100%. Yes. But when you bring up autoimmune disease and when you bring up the thyroid, like to me, it's just an excuse. Like, I'm not going to allow, you know what I mean? It's like you hear all these awesome, individuals that I aspire to be like in this world that, when I was doing high rocks in these competitions, there was a guy out there with, I don't know the proper terminology for it, but he was literally out there running with one leg, dude.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that is a hero. You know what I mean? Like, he's the underdog, like, but he's out there taking action and making it happen and enjoying the process and journey. And that's kind of like the autoimmune disease. Yeah, sure, that put me 3 or 4 years behind, but I never used that as an excuse. Yeah. Like, I always, you know what I mean? Like, I guess that's what's allowed me to believe, like, okay, if I'm going to be the underdog, cool. You know what? The only person who I have to show off in front of right now is myself. Like, I just have, I have to prove it to myself that I can do these things, right? And there's no limitations. There's nothing going to hold me back. Like, I didn't understand this to this level to this day, right? At 13 or 14, 15 years of age. But I could see how that built a foundation for me for having the underdog, the guy I picked on the last team, and having that belief. Like, right now, it's just like, okay, I know I got to put in the work. I know. So there's some podcasters out there that might have to have, that may went viral, or a TikTok or a video that on their 15th one. This dude right here is going to have to do 2,000 before anything happens. Yeah. That's just my mentality.
And that's the winning mindset. That's why you're so successful, because most people don't think 2,000 episodes. What? They're like, they're expecting success after the second, and then they quit, And saying that's most people, well, that's why most people don't have what they want, or they won't even try anymore after a certain point. Like, so because it's all belief. It's the thought process in your mind made you do the things out here externally. And so that is available to anybody at any point if they can get their mind to believe it, and you've coached a lot of people, and you hear their struggles, their issues. The reason they came to you is they want guidance, they want help, and they know that you can give them that clarity. With people who don't have those, I mean, here's the thing, I think all kids have got something, or all people have something in their childhood they could have used to make a decision for the positive. Most of them have made them to the negative a lot of the time. And that's why we have self-limiting beliefs. Like, what would you say to people out there who have those self-limiting beliefs that didn't use it to their advantage? And let's say there might be a 50-year-old out there listening, or a 60-year-old, limiting beliefs. How do you get them into that underdog mindset where, and I can do this, I do want to win? What's the first step, first thoughts, like, that could help them still do accomplish what they want to accomplish today?
Yeah, man. So that's a great question. So I would say two things. And I said this early and often with my mom and dad. The number one thing is you got to have a support system. And what I mean by that is you got to have somebody that is going to lift you up, that is going to level you up, man. And that was my mom and dad. And I'm so grateful for them to this day, because when I got knocked down, when I had the autoimmune disease, when all this stuff, like when I got picked on the last team, I could have threw in the towel and been like, I quit. And my parents could have said, you suck, right? Or maybe you need to do something else, Sean. But no, my parents were there. They picked me back up. So that's the number one thing, is have a support system, whether it's a wife, a spouse, a husband, your kids, your best friend, a friend, somebody that when you get knocked down, they're going to pick you back up.
Yeah.
I don't care if it takes 100,000 times, right? The podcast could suck. The running could suck. You could become in last place if you're 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Doesn't freaking matter. Have that support system. And if they're not supporting you, it's time to find a new support system. Right?
I don't think people understand that, because I'm one of them, but like I had a good support system, but you just hearing you say that, people are like, man, just having people that can support me is going to help me get where I need to go. It is true. A lot of people may be thinking that I don't have good parents. I didn't have good parents. I didn't have any kind of support system, and I still don't. Man, could you speak to like our mastermind group, for example? There are people out there, right? Like if you can't find them, or if you don't have them currently, there are people out there. You just have to find that support system. How do people find that? Where would they go? What do they do to get there?
I honestly think I'm a big believer in, this is kind of the second part to your first question, is the second thing you have to do is take action yourself, right? Nobody's going to come to your rescue. Nobody's going to do it for you, right? Your mom, your dad, my mom and dad, they weren't going to be out there, playing. They weren't going to be playing baseball for me. They weren't going to be on the dirt track. They weren't going to be playing football. I had to do it, right? Yeah. I had to own up to it. And so what I mean by that is, like, for example, consistently showing up. So if you're like, you know what, I want to work out. Okay, well, let's break that down. And what I mean by that is like, I just want to do 5 push-ups every single day, or running. Like I want to run a marathon in December. Okay, cool. What do I need to do on a daily basis? Well, tomorrow I need to lace up my shoes. Lace up my shoes, walk outside. Great. Check that box off the list. The next day, lace up your shoes, go outside, do a quick little jog for 15 seconds. Great. You just did that. Congratulations. Progress. You just showed up. So my point is, on the second thing is, human beings, we want to see progress, right? Just like when you were at the track, when we invited you to the track, the Alpha Run Club, you're like, you know what? Okay, cool. This is kind of where I'm at in life. Let me just plug myself in. You showed up. You got up early. You hadn't got up that early in probably over a year. Who knows? And you showed up. You laced up. You got there. You were tired. You had 3 hours of sleep, you said, because of the anticipation, because of the stress, the anxiety of showing up, not knowing what to expect. Then you started running. Then we started doing jogging. And then after that, you're like, I'm not dead. I'm not dying. Mm-hmm. Like this, I'm seeing progress in the endorphins and the dopamine start. So that's the same thing with what I'm talking about, what I learned at 12 and 13. Like, okay, yeah, I fell down on the dirt bike, but I got back up. I didn't die. And I finished the cross line and I beat the guy that was ahead of me. That right there, you get that dopamine, that endorphin, that hit. Like, I want more of that, right? Yeah. The football team. Okay, cool. You got picked last place, Sean. Great. Okay, but guess what? Now I got an opportunity to start on the last place. So it's all progress, right? So if anybody's listening to this, my biggest recommendation is, one, have that support system, that wife, and if you don't have that support system, then be the example. Be the example, right? Does that make sense? And I break it down like this, Ewan. So there's the Matrix, right? With Keanu Reeves, and he's the one, right? They all look at him like he's the one. So that's how I feel like in my family, like I'm the one, right? And I want people, my mom, my dad, my sister, my friends, my family, my community, to model my behavior. And this is how I'm going to show up. I'll get knocked down 1,000 times, but I'll be 1% better than I was yesterday. I may have 2 setbacks, but I'm going to try again tomorrow, because we're all imperfect human beings. And when you see that progress, just like you showing up at the track and running around that first lap, you're like, I'm not dying. I'm sweating. I'm really enjoying the conversations. Whatever it may be that hits your soul, your mind, body, and soul, because you plugged yourself in because you had the support system with those two things. Now look at you. You just signed up for a freaking marathon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. It really is. I think it's the amygdala is a portion of the brain that it senses danger, right? So like, that's why people are afraid of public speaking. And people are more afraid of public speaking than death. So they say, most people know what that means. Like, it's very difficult to get up there because the brain doesn't know that it's not actually that serious. Like, you're not going to die if you go up and speak in front of people, but that judgment, that fear of looking foolish, the brain says this is worse than death, and people are petrified of public speaking. But as you do more speaking, as you go out and do more things that you're afraid of, the amygdala slowly but surely realizes, oh, this is not a dangerous situation. And that's how things that were difficult in the past become easier because your brain's like, this is not a problem anymore. You could go into another situation and the amygdala fires right back on and says, oh man, I could die here. And so you panic, you don't do it, you back off, leave it for tomorrow, or never do it. And yeah, I think just getting out there, just do it once. And that's the first step, right? Like you're saying, just tie up your shoelaces. The brain's like, okay, I can handle that. The next day you go take a few steps, whatever. You don't have to run the whole thing. You're not going to die. I think that's a great, man, when you said that, I was like, man, I think most people do think it's do or die, man. It's life or death. And it almost never is. It just be, and you've said it multiple times, you don't mind if you fail or not, because you're going to get back up. And everybody has that in them. They just don't realize it, I think. And you do such a good job of making people get there,
And once you do it that one time, it just takes that one time. If you're listening to this, that one time, right? Lacing up the shoes, going for that walk, going for that run, right? And whatever it is, it doesn't have to, don't bite off more than you can chew. And that's what I've always tried to tell myself. Start small. And what I mean by that is like build a foundation. Then when you create that momentum, when you create that confidence, it's like when right now you're showing up for the Alpha Run Club, you have your pace, you have how many miles you've ran. But in 6 months, you're going to be crossing that finish line. You're manifesting that, right? In 6 months, then you're going to tell yourself, now what? Right? Then that's when you start compounding. That's when you start building that momentum. But you just have to take that one step, whatever it looks like, whatever area of life. Well, I want to save, if it's in finances, well, I want to save $1,000 for my emergency fund. Okay, cool. How much do you have in the bank account? I'm in the negatives. Okay, well, what do we need to do? What do we need to pay off debt? We got to break things down, right? Well, okay, I have $5,000 in debt. Okay, well, and let's break that down. Let's work it backwards. And so we can get ahead. But my point is like, and myself included, there was so many times where I'm like, man, when I look at these people on billboards and see these social media gurus and these influencers, it's freaking intimidating, man. You know what I mean? Like the video, and all these different marketing and advertising is like, it's all so pretty.
Yeah.
Right? It's so freaking pretty. You're just like, I could never do that.
That's the end result. It's
the end result.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so now I'm like, you know what? Man, if my biggest thing is like, if I could just put one foot in front of the other, right? I may not become in first place, but when I put this one foot in front of the other, just like what I've been sharing in the last 5 or 10 minutes, then it's going to create momentum and build. It's going to compound, right? Just like investments. You put $100 a month in a mutual fund. It compounds over the next 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, right? And so that's the way I apply in my areas of life. Like I'm going to have setbacks. I'm going to have challenges. I'm going to have obstacles. I'm aware of that. But if I can take these small little principles, small little concepts and plug myself in, put one foot in front of the other, just show up, surround myself with that support system, the rest is freaking history, man. Because with that support system, with that best friend, and with putting one foot in front of the other, you're going to get to where you want to go. It may take 6 months. It may take 40 years. But guess what? It does, to my mind, it doesn't matter because I'm going to be there anyways. So why not die trying?
Yeah. Yeah, because that's how you get ahead. I mean, that's how you get what you want. And it takes effort. The rocket ship, it takes a lot of energy to get where you're going to go, but you have to start somewhere. Yeah, the influencers, they look so pretty when you see them now. I guess good advice to the listeners, man, go watch their first video. Go see what that looked like. Because they were a bumbling idiot when they first started, right? Like,
go back and look at my video in 2015 when I first started the insurance company. It was like, well, my name is Sean.
And now you're so it's just reps. You put in the time, it's just like the gym, and it's second nature. And that's true for everybody. They're going to be better.
Well, people reach out to me like, even y'all, like, oh man, your video's so good. Your audio, all this stuff so good. I'm like, sitting behind the scenes, I'm like, no, it's freaking not. Like, I have this imposter syndrome, this self-doubt. Like, behind the scenes, I'm like, when I listen to myself, I don't even like listening to myself, Ewan. I don't even like listening to my own podcast because I'm like, oh God, he said that.
Yeah, it's
but
raw.
then somebody else messages me like, dude, I needed to hear that,
Yeah, because people want to hear raw, and that's what you're so good at. You're very your very own self. Your vulnerability comes through, and I love it, man. To switch gears, I had a question. It was a week or two ago on one of the podcasts, and you mentioned that you had been a terrible boss. You were a bad boss, terrible boss, and you kind of skipped over it because it was in part of what you were saying. And I was like, I want to know what that was like. I want to know what it was like for your employees at the time. And the reason I want to know is because I know who you are now, and you've changed significantly. Now, you're not just a good boss. You're a great boss because I've seen how your employees interact with you. I'm not speaking for your employees. They would honestly say this, I feel like. And so that's where it's rare, right? People have a hard time reflecting. It's my way or the highway. Do as I say. I'm the boss or I'm the manager. They don't even realize that they may be the part of the problem, and that the way they're being impacts other people, and they don't ever realize, like, I need to change perhaps. And so you have just did this massive 180. Like, you just, I know you put a lot of time and effort into that, but I was kind of like, what was that like at the time? You being bad, terrible boss, what were some of, maybe an example? And then I have a follow-up question to that. I'll ask it now. Did you just realize at one moment that I got to change, or was it this like a pivotal moment, or was it a process of like, okay, that didn't go well, I can't keep being this way, or whatever? But yeah, so take us back. What was that like, and how did you transition into getting away from that?
So up until about 2015, it was all eyes on me. And what I mean by that is, just like we've been talking for the last 30 minutes, it was all eyes on me, whether it was motocross, football, baseball. I always felt alone. I always felt like the lone wolf. I never really felt a part of a team because I was so dialed in and focused on what I needed to do to help the team to get to where they wanted to be. It was almost like a selfish ego, unaware of it, right? And so I call myself the bulldozer. And so what I mean by that is like, all the way up until I was probably 21, 22, even through Enterprise, State Farm, like, it was all eyes on me. Like, I didn't care if it was a team effort or whatever it may be. It was like, cool, call it what you want, but I'm going to do what I need to do, right? Because I need to put one foot in front of the other. I need to make one more phone call than this other person right here. I need to do this one more thing, show up a little bit earlier, show up a little bit later, because remember, I've got to put in the hard work. I got to outwork this guy next to me. And so it was all eyes on me for 2 decades, right? And so when I got terminated from Enterprise and State Farm, right, 2015 hit, that's when I started. I was like, you know what? I'm not meant to work for somebody. I'm going to start my own business. And that's what a lot of business owners do, is like, I'm tired of working for the man. My value is not being received. I'm not getting paid for it, the byproduct. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go start my own business. Well, fast forward, I started it for, pretty much the wrong reasons, right? Money and freedom and assets, paying for liabilities and all this other stuff, which that's all ego. And so I was just a bulldozer in the business. And then mentors of mine said, okay, you've got to hire, if you want to scale, you want to monetize, you got to hire a team. Okay, cool. I'll do that. But I never focused on the team. I always focused on, what can I get from the team? What results could we get? What outcome, right? Follow my lead. If I'm going to be at 110%, I need you to be at 110%. It was I was just being selfish. I was being ego driven, unaware, and mindful of the ego.
Like you were, honestly, using people, but people were
no, I was
pieces of a chessboard that you moved around to get the result that you wanted.
Exactly. Yeah, in which it's a horrible way, right? It's a horrible way to run a business. Yeah, and because I was just like, I had read the E-Myth like early enough. I was like, oh, I'm the entrepreneur automatically, right? Or the manager. Like, you do as I follow. Yeah. That was my mentality, right? Oh, man. If I say this, you do this. And and don't make any excuses. And so I was looking at it from a selfish standpoint. It's like me, right? And then to answer your second part question, I was like, after 3 or 4 years, employee turnover, right? people just always, like, I had people coming in and like, it just seemed like there was always an argument, right? We always butted heads, and like they always walked on eggshells around me, right? And even in like this carried into other areas of my life, like with friends, my wife, and I was like, what is going on? You know, because what I had done up until that point to society was success, right? Like built this business and social media and, you know, money in the bank and
the image, looking a certain way for yourself to feel like that you had succeeded. And you had, I mean, you 100% you had succeeded, but, and you said this in your own words, like, but you didn't, there was a much bigger area of success that we know is, money's such a small part, like success, what is success? You know, it is, to me, how good are your relationships? And I think, you know, you said that too.
Yeah. So fast forwarding 3 or 4 years, I was like, man, cool. Yeah, I got money in the bank, got a business. The image is there. The social media, everything that I've set out to do for myself is accomplished. I was literally checking the boxes off the goal every single year, and I was crushing them. Yeah. I was goal oriented. And you had even made comments about that. You're like, yeah, man, I just don't, you know, you're so goal oriented. I'm just, you know, and so I was like, yeah, isn't that the way we should be? Right. Like, and so I was so dialed in and so focused, whatever it was, if we played racquetball, softball, I wasn't there to have fun. I wasn't there to serve an impact, to laugh, and have a good time. I was there to do one thing. I was there to win, to be better than the next guy. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I learned in 3 or 4 years was that's not the way to live. That's not the way I wanted to live my life. And I'm 36 now. And so this was 8 years. So this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even earlier. And I was like, why are my employees leaving me? Why are people walking around on eggshells? And so I didn't know the answers to all these questions, but I knew something wasn't right. And that's when in December of 2019, I believe, or maybe even 2020, that's when I was like, dude, I'm miserable. I'm unfulfilled. There's a lack of purpose. It's all about me. I'm 33 and I have all this stuff, but I feel alone. I feel by myself.
Not to interrupt, but just for the listeners to hear this, like you said it, checking the boxes, you know, because that is what, who made the boxes? Who said that those are the boxes to check? Is it, you know, I want to say it's society, because that's what we consider. Well, yeah, once you have X amount, once you check these 10 boxes, you've got it made. You're done. Like, you're happy. Happiness is there. And what did you find? You've checked all the boxes and you're bankrupt emotionally. You know, I've been there myself. You know, it's like, what was this all for? It was a lie, a smokescreen. And man, I hope people, what I'm trying to figure out, how do you get people who have not experienced it yet to fully understand, to where they are not focusing on checking those boxes? I think people are afraid because they don't want to not have those things. They want to have them, you know, and there's nothing wrong with having them. But there's a healthy version. And what I don't think people realize is, if they work on, which I think is what you're about to say, if they worked on that first, not only would they check those boxes, they'd have 10x, and they do it 10 times quicker. When I say 10 times, I mean it. Like, it's coming a lot faster if you work on this emotional side. But yeah, sorry to interrupt, but just continue there with what you were about to say.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail right on the head. So right around December of 2019, 2020, I was like, man, I'm unfulfilled, lack of purpose, I'm miserable, and I didn't know why. And I didn't understand. Like, I just felt stuck. And I was like, I don't want to keep going down this path of what I've already been doing the last 4 or 5 years. Sure, it's got me to where I want to be, but I know for things to change, you have to change. And if you're like, for me, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was like, there's a better way. And so, and that's why, like, if you hear, you know, people that are, you know, whether you're a drinker or a smoker or you're overweight, and you go to the doctor and you get that wake up call and they're like, hey, look, if you don't stop this, this is what's going to happen. You're not going to be a part of your grandkids' lives, your kids' lives. That's kind of how I felt. Like, if I don't stop this, like, people are not going to want to come into my life, you know? And whether that's an employee, and some of the things that I had said to, like, employees, I'm like, looking back and reflecting back, I'm like, I've had to go back and apologize to them. Like,
wow. Man, I know your personality, it's like you're a driver, an activator. And for someone like you to be able to apologize, I don't think people realize how big a deal. It's easy for some people to apologize. To me, I've trained myself to do it, to apologize. And my dad was a very good example of that. Some people just didn't have to train at all. They're just good at doing it. Apologize too much, in fact. I know your personality type and personality types like it. Yeah, I mean, it's just spectacular that you were able to do that. So I just want to acknowledge that. So yeah, continue. My bad.
Appreciate that. Yeah, because and of course it didn't come easy. I've had to really work on becoming, and that's why I'm so big on like becoming the best version of yourself, 1% better than you were yesterday. And I didn't understand that, of course, 3 or 4 years ago. And now it's like, I'm not trying to bite off more than I can chew. I'm just trying to be just a better guy than I was yesterday. And whether that's talking to a friend differently or maybe holding something back. Like, for instance, even this morning, I received an email. And there's every like old part of Sean wants to come out and like send an email back and attack this person, right? Yeah. But I'm like, no. I'm like, it's gonna pull my peace, my joy, and my bliss, and my values. It's gonna ruin our relationship that I have with that person. So I'm not gonna send an email back, right? Yeah. Or I'm not gonna send an email back right now. I'm gonna send an email back when I cool down.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas before, 4 years ago, you're gonna feel me through that email.
You're gonna ring their doorbell face to face.
Yes. And so now I've really learned, like, the old Sean would have been like, burning bridges, right? Like, I'm a bulldoze you. Like, you're not gonna come at me like that. But now it's like, what is this person experiencing? There's no emotion attached to this email. Put a different meaning to it. Like, be the bigger person. So it's all these different mindsets that are going through me. Like, take time right now, and it's all helped me because I'm just becoming a better version of myself. And then also being a better leader, whether it's a friend or employee or my community, because if I'm going to react to somebody else, then it's a surefire way of not getting, not having a good outcome. And that was me for the first 4 or 5 years. Like, I was a reactor, man.
Yeah.
I wear my emotions on my shoulder, on my sleeve. Like, like, you're going to hear it from me. And that's just part of my temper, my personality.
I hope listeners are hearing there, because it's not easy for you to you have to control yourself. Think about how you were in the past, and this is everybody, right? Like, they react, they respond. And most people, self included, it's just the way I am. And they don't, that is this a get out of jail free card, and they don't change. They don't progress, and they keep getting the same results. They wonder why are people responding to me that way, and but the level of energy you're having to put into control yourself, and just I won't, if people are there listening and they feel like that's just the way they are, they're not getting the results that they would like, or have relationships that they want, and it is a skill that is buildable to control your emotions. It's not easy. No one's saying it is, but where did that come from for you? Like, what was that moment? Or when you had the moment, you didn't want to live your life like that. So what happens next for you to be able to go down that journey of getting control over your emotions? Like, what was it?
Yeah, up until about 3 years ago, I always reinvested money back into the money we made from business. We reinvested back to the back into the business, right? Any business owner knows this typically if you're building a team. And so you're paying payroll, your overhead, your rents, and all this other stuff. So that's where all my money was going. But $0 was going to the personal development fund of Sean, growing myself. Well, if you're listening to this, and even this, Ewan, like, and you want to become a leader, right? I don't care if it's one person or a community or whoever it may be, you have got to work harder on yourself than you do anything else, right? And so what I mean by that is reinvesting funds back into money. I don't care if it's $5, a $5 book, an audio, or a podcast like this. You've got to receive the information, write it down, and apply it. And so for me at that time, I didn't really listen to podcasts. I didn't really read books. I didn't really do anything outside of me. I knew what worked and got me to where I was when I first started the business. And that was sales, right? And so however leadership and management is typically what your team is going to follow. So if you're just driven in sales and that's it, nothing else, that's all that's going to matter. And then the team's going to feel the pressure. And you're only is going to be as your business. And to me, in my opinion, like, your life, your business is only going to be as good as your development, your growth. And so at that point in my life, I was like, I'm stuck. I'm unfulfilled. And all this stuff had hit me. And I don't know if me and you were talking, or was it me and you talking? It was December of 2019 or 2020. I think it was 2020. And I was like, who do I need? Maybe I need to research who I need to hire. And that's when I hired
Yeah, we talked, and
We talked about
it
it.
was time for you to get a performance or someone that could give you insight outside of your inner circle.
Yes. And that was the first time in my entire life, in 33, 34 years, where I was like, you know what? I have got to invest money back into myself because I hadn't done it up until that point. When I hired that life coach, it's like something magic happened, right? Between talking with him, working through the worksheets, the exercises, and I got that life back. I got that purpose again. And of course, I had to do the work behind the scenes, right? The only thing that he did is shed the light on my own freaking ego and all this other stuff that I was missing, right? Yeah. And sometimes that's all it freaking takes is that one other person when you're ready of sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's what I love about podcasts and video and stuff like that, because maybe if somebody's listening to it right now, they're like, nah, Sean, yeah, I already know all that stuff. Okay, cool. But then you go back and then you remember it's the mustard seed and you go back and listen to it again, or you listen to episode 100 and you're like, I'm ready for it now, right? That was me in that time period is like, I'm ready for it now. When I first started the business, I wasn't ready for it. I didn't want to hear it. I was a bulldozer. I had my blinders on. Remember the goggles for motocross, football? Like, I'm dialed in. I'm focused. You could have been freaking Donald Trump. You could have been Martin Luther King. It doesn't matter. They would have tried to come in and tell me something. I'd be like, cool, bro. That works for you. That doesn't work for me. It's the worst mentality.
Yeah.
So when when I was sick between unfulfilled, lack of purpose, and stuck of everything that I've already mentioned, friends and family walking on egg creds around me, my employees leaving me, being a bad boss, being a bad leader, not getting to where I wanted to go. Because what got me to where I was not going to get me to where I wanted to go, right? Yeah. And that's where I was stuck. And so when I hired him, it just shed the light on my ego and other areas of my life. Like, bro, you're being selfish right now. And then it led me down the rabbit hole for the next, I call it the transformational journey, for the next 8 to 12 months. I invested thousands of dollars, like from podcasts, reading, coaches, mentors, counselors, therapists across the board for the last 12 months. And that is what it's allowed me to get to where I am today and serving and impacting. So if somebody's in their 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s, man, I wish I would have known about this in my teens, bro. Think about what I could have done for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And so
do you realize, I think a lot of people have a hard time getting a coach because they think it's going to be this, I do this, and then I'll be this way, or I'll make a conscious decision to then be this way. Would you agree, like after you went during that process of getting the coaching, and even maybe after it was done, like a few months later, you just automatically were different and be like, oh, I would have handled that differently in the past. And did you experience that, like, where you just had fundamentally, like, how did that happen? This wasn't a conscious decision. I have changed as a person because of, it's like magic, because I've had a personal coach as well, a couple of different ones. And I remember this moment of, man, we didn't even work specifically on this, but what they did with me and my mindset, I have more confidence here, or I'm more at peace, or I'm just more articulate. And it just happened. And it was like the power of reaching out to someone and talking, them getting to say, them asking questions that got things out in the open, the power of getting things out in the open and shining on blind spots. It will change you in ways that it's not a conscious decision. It will just fundamentally change you, and you show up as this different person that is elevated, leveled up. Would you resonate with that?
100%. And here's what happens. Men in general, we don't embrace vulnerability. We don't like sharing our feelings and our thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is like, we can figure it out on our own. We can do it on our own. We're DIYers. We can YouTube this. We can,
to reach out.
Exactly. It's weak to reach out. And that was my mentality, especially being raised by my dad. I don't need help. I can figure it out. You ask my dad, he can do everything, right? Yeah. You ask me, I'm like, I can do one good thing. And then the other stuff, I'm like, I suck at that. Like, I'm going to hire a contractor, whoever I need, a coach, a mentor. I struggle with that. Just like the website. When I tried to build a website, I tried to do it for about 5 seconds. And I learned really quick. I'm like, I can't build websites. I need to hire somebody. But before I'd be like, I got this. And I would have spent 2 weeks on it.
I think it's fair to say, man, people think it's weak to reach out. At the point I'm at now, and you would 100% say this, it is weakness, major weakness. there's something behind the scenes that doesn't allow people to reach out. So not reaching out is the weakness. I hope people get that. There might be some non-reacher outers out there, and they like, oh, I'm not doing that. That's wet, sappy stuff. Man, I hope they're hearing how strong, how big would you have to be to reach out? You won't be able to pick up the phone because you're too afraid. You think it's weakness, and that in itself is weakness, that you can't do something, as opposed to, man, I can do anything. I'll pick up the phone right now. I'll call. I'm not afraid,
Agreed. 100% agreed. And that was my mentality for the first several years. I was like, I don't need help. I don't care. If you're doing it the way I want to do it, like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do it on my own terms. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And I'm going to get to where I want to be. Right. But what I've learned is when you have a coach, a mentor, it's somebody on the sharing a different perspective. Right. And we call it level up and becoming the best version of yourself. And just working on being 1% better than you were yesterday is because you're hearing a different perspective. You're working on and competing against yourself on who you were yesterday. You're just leveling up, not, in these across the board. And so when you level up in one area of life and when you're mindful and aware and you shed the light with that other perspective, it's almost like a confirmation, whoever you're talking to, just like me and you talking right now. When we're talking, you're nodding your head, yes. And then the listener, the audience are like, oh, I resonate with that. I connect with that. It's a confirmation, and it does something in the body. Like, okay, I'm on the right path. Before then, I didn't have any of that, right? I was trying to figure out things on my own. YouTube, podcasts. If it was big, I didn't even know it because I had my head so buried in the sand, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't pick it up long enough to understand or even try to understand like the importance of that. And unfortunately, that's what happens, man, is like,
what advice would you give to someone that they do think it's weakness to reach out, and yet that's the very thing that they need? In fact, people who don't, if you ask yourself, I'm not really the person, you are the person that needs to reach out. I'm speaking from experience. How do you get people over that hump, over that barrier? Like, how do you get them to accelerate? And instead of reaching out, because man, what if you reach out 18 months from now or 3 or 5 years from now when they could reach out today? How do you get them to do that?
Man, in my honest opinion, unless somebody else has got a better answer, people, guys, women will not reach out until they're ready. And what I mean by that is do you understand? And so what I mean by that is like, you could be listening to this podcast, episode 1, and then you could be listening to episode 100 of the Level Up with Sean Meyers podcast and go, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I feel stuck. I feel unfulfilled. But until that time hits, it's just like the smoker, the drinker, the person that's going to do a divorce, right? And your so you've neglected your wife and your husband so many days.
Yep.
And now you want to do something about it on day 1, day 10 or 10 years.
When it gets bad enough.
When it gets bad enough.
Yeah.
So that's my point. And so you have to want it. Mm-hmm. You have to want to change your life. You have to want to get unfulfilled and unstuck, right? And once you embrace the applied suffering and drop that guard and reach out for help, right?
Nothing but good things wait there, right? You can pick up the phone and be like, oh, this isn't going to be. I don't think there could be a single example of someone picking up the phone and there not be something better on the other side, no matter what that situation looks like. Right? I mean, how could it be bad? I hope people are getting this, what frustrates me is I don't want to accept that they have to wait till they're ready. But you're right. I mean, you just can't make anybody do anything ever. You can't. They have to do it for themselves. But yeah.
I think that's why it's so important for the personal growth, for the personal development, because if you're listening to this, what has gotten you to where you are right now, this very minute, is not going to get you to where you want to be tomorrow, in the next week, in the next month.
Yeah.
You want to run a marathon in December. What you've done up until this point is not going to get you through that finish line in December.
No.
Right? You're going to need help. You're going to need to invest in a program. You're going to need to invest in a coach. And you've already taken those action steps to do that.
Yep.
Right? Because you've embraced the vulnerability.
Yep. Yeah, that's so true, man. And it was a moment of trying to think to myself, how did it all occur? And it was, there was a few steps taken first, and then I had the belief that I can do this thing, this bigger thing. But I had to, what it was when I came to the run club, and hopefully people can resonate with this. I happened to run a mile, like a month before, and I was like, man, I felt good. was like, I'm gonna run a mile every other day. And then I went to Scotland to see family. Came back. I hadn't ran the whole time. Took another week off. Wasn't feeling great. Ran another mile, and I was like, I feel good again. I was like, I'm gonna keep running. And then someone mentioned something at the mastermind group. Oh, the run club, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna surprise these guys, man. I'm gonna show up. They'll look like a ghost showed up. And then we ran. And then ever since then, I mean, that just attests to surrounding yourself with good people. Yeah, if you want to be a runner, hang around with runners. You want to make $1 million, hang around with people who made $1 million. People who have great marriages. It's so cheesy and simple, but literally just hang around with those people and you will. Now I'm running a marathon. I'm proof. Like I'm going to put this in there. I would never. I mean, I was not just didn't want to do a marathon. I hated the thought of doing it, and I didn't like the fact that other people were doing it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. What are you just going to run that long for? And now all of a sudden I'm running with runners, and now I'm like, let's go do a marathon. You know, what are the possibilities then? My mind is, well, what else? Who else could I be hanging around where I would get to that next level? You know, and we are doing that with the mastermind group, but I'm even thinking, what's impossible? Well, maybe let's give that a shot. What's impossible? Let's go try that. You know, and you have definitely installed that in the whole group. You know,
I think modeling the behavior and just embracing the journey, Ewan Heinemeier's own journey, Sean Meyers' own journey, our audience, the person listening to this, you listening to this, embracing your own journey, right? And not having to think, oh my gosh, this dude's doing a marathon. Because to some people, a marathon's like intimidating. Wow.
That was me. I was that person.
Exactly. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. If I heard someone say it, I'd be like, I'm out. This is not even relevant to me.
Exactly. And so it's like, it's embracing your own unique journey. Mm-hmm. You're not Sean Meyers. Mm-hmm. I'm not Ewan Heinemeier.
Yep.
You're your own journey. You're just plugging yourself in, surrounding yourself with these other people that allow you to align with what it is that you want to do. Right. Mm-hmm. And then we start shedding the light and bringing mindfulness to things and we're framing it differently from what you used to look at it because you were trying to do life all alone. You were stuck at the house by yourself, right? And especially during COVID. I mean, the numbers went through the roof on people having anxiety, depressed state and all this other stuff because they couldn't be around family or friends or their support system.
Yeah, man, that's so true.
Yeah, just those two things, man, embracing that vulnerability, reaching out for help. And if you're not ready, the cool thing is like, make sure you continue to plug yourself in, whether it's just hitting that download on the podcast, listening to every week, because it's not if, but when you hear it and you connect and it sparks that fire and you're like, I'm ready, right? Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about it.
You jump in a lot of things, and I love it, man, because I'm a toe dipper. I'll dip my toe in just to see if it's all good, you know? And I realized that is a pretty good strategy, too. Like, if you're not ready, just dip it in. You don't big commitment, just do a little bit. Just dangle your own carrot, you know, and you never know where that will lead. And now I do find myself hanging around with you who jumps in. Okay, now I will jump into more things, you know, and it's because we're hanging around. I do, you know, I'm picking that skill up. We're running along. This might have to be like a two-parter, man. It's like been an hour.
Do you have any questions? More questions?
Do. Well, really, that really covered a number of the same kind of elements. Yeah, I think we really covered it. I had some questions about like how do you get people who are overwhelmed and intimidated by the level of success that you've had, that you've done all these things, and I think we kind of just hit on it, but you know we could wrap up with this. But just what would you say to someone that is like, I can't do those things? Listen to these guys talk. Just to instill that belief in themselves to make that little decision. We already kind of covered it, but just to wrap up, like, what would you say?
I would say the first thing is to continue to get curious. And what I mean by that is knowing that what you're doing right now, you may be executing, you may be going through life, and you may be happy. Okay, cool. That's great. I love it. And what you're doing may be working, whether it's the job, the business, these different areas of life. But just make sure that you continue to ask yourself questions because you're going to evolve. You're going to, one way or another, the universe is going to throw stuff at you and you're either going to be ready for it or you're not, right? It's either that person's going to come into your life, you're going to lose that job, the business is going to go under, you're going to get those divorce papers from your wife or your husband. You're saving money. Okay, you got $100,000 in the bank. The universe is going to come take that money.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to continuously evolve and make sure you're adapting and make sure that you're getting curious and reassessing and reflecting. I call it reflecting on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I do it weekly. A lot of people do it once a year. Their New Year's resolution, right? What do they want?
Why do they not? Why do they not reflect?
I didn't reflect because, for me personally, like I didn't reflect because I knew what I was doing was what I needed to do at that time to get me to where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. For me, it was like, okay, if I wanted $100,000 in my bank, I know I needed to do this, this, and this. I know I needed to make this many sales. I know I needed to get this many employees. So I knew I wanted my asset, which is a business, to pay for my liability. If I wanted the truck, I wanted that asset to pay. So that's it. That's all that mattered. That's all I focused on. Nothing else. Yeah. Birthdays, negative. Marriage, negative. Girlfriend, negative. Nope. This. That's all that matters. Right?
Yeah.
And then one day you'll wake up, and thankfully, for me, it was 34. Right? But somebody may be listening to this going, well, I'm 40s, 50s, 60s. Right? Or maybe you're in your teens. I've talked to teenagers that I would have never thought in a million years, some of the language that comes out of their mouth, like I was talking about foilers and partying and all this other stuff. And they're sitting here going, how can I grow? You know, I had a 19-year-old reach out to me. I want to hire a mentor. What? Hire a mentor? You're so far ahead of the game. So I think it's just that awareness. I think it's that mindfulness. I think it's that getting curious, like for things to change. Jim Rohn says that, right? Things to change, you have to change. And if you're happy with where you are right now, cool, great. But reflect and be aware of where you are and where you want to go, and be mindful about, are you growing? You're either growing or you're dying. That's it. And if you're complacent, if you are complacent and you're happy and you're making $250,000 a year and your business is doing well, your marriage is doing well, your kids are loving you, right? You got friends and family. You're the one. If you are complacent, here's what's going to happen. The universe is going to throw something at you, and they're going to freaking throw a hard curveball at you, and you're going to get knocked on your rear end, and you're going to be like, what happened?
Yeah. Because
you're not working on becoming the best version of yourself every single day until the day you die. You have to work on yourself, right? You have to evolve. You have to adapt. You have to get curious. And that is what I mean by reflection. Am I a better husband than I was yesterday? No? Okay, cool. What do I need to do differently? What conversations do I need to have differently? Who do I need to reach out to?
Yeah.
Who's doing it better? Who's doing, who, not how, who?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope people get that, man. I really do. But people think now is it, that everything's good right now. And I hate to say it, but you're either going up or going down. There's no flat. Flat is down. Because so many times, like being a dad is one of the most important things to me is my kids. And I spend a lot of time putting in this effort being this dad. And weeks will go by and I suddenly realize, oh man, I kind of took my foot off the gas a little bit and we're a little more distant. No, I mean, we're all very close, but I'm like, man, I got to pay attention. I got to make sure I'm constantly on this, or I will wake up and find out I've not been the dad that I've said that I would be, or was even. I think everything goes like that. You lose.
And what did you just do? You self-reflected.
Yes, that's right. And the response from my kids, they'll be the first. I'll be the first to know. They'll tell me, or I'll see their responses. I'm like, that's my responsibility. That's my fault. They're acting like that because I'm not being involved as much as I should be. And yeah, and that's probably there's always indicators. Yeah, if there's something not going well in your life, that's an indicator. That's kind of self-reflects somewhere, somehow, and take those baby steps to figure it out.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah. Good times, man. Yeah.
And that's a wrap for another fantastic episode of Level Up with Sean Meyers. I hope you enjoyed this special interview where Ewan Heinemeier turned the tables and got to ask me the questions for a change. If you found value in today's episode and want to keep leveling up in your own life and career, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback means the world to me. Don't forget to connect with us on social media and visit our Facebook page, Level Up Mentoring and Coaching, for more great content, show notes, and resources to help you on your journey to success. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, the path to success is all about constant growth and learning. So until next time, keep striving, keep learning, and keep leveling up.